Now we head to our season recap of our Seattle Storm, which, again, that season didn't end how we wanted it to, with the Storm losing to the eventual WNBA champion Las Vegas Aces in the semifinal. We look now to our categories: MVP, Most Improved Player, Best New Addition, Best Game, biggest weaknesses for the team, and some offseason targets. We'll definitely go through some stuff more as the offseason continues for the Storm, as this is a big offseason with the departure of Sue Bird and her retirement. Breanna Stewart is not locked down by contract. There are technically only 2 players under contract for Seattle. So this roster will probably look really different next year. When we look to MVP, this was a unanimous vote. Breanna Stewart, just incredible numbers. We'll get to more news about Stewie and some stats because she had another accolade announced over the past week, but she was the heartbeat of Seattle. She continues to be the heartbeat of this team. Where Stewie goes, this team goes. And, it was unfortunate that her perfect record at home in the playoffs was broken against the Aces this year, but Stewie just continues to be the best player in the world. Should have won MVP. That's its own case. But yeah, this was a unanimous award. I don't think there's any debate about this, but it was special to continue to see Stewie play the game of basketball throughout the season. Most Improved Player, Bell and I were split on this. I went with Ezi Magbegor. This was a tough choice, in my opinion, because, she went with Gabby Williams, as you can see on the screen, and you could have easily gone with that one as well. Gabby getting her first real year in the WNBA, having some great support, had a really solid year, had some offensive moments at times where it's like, wow, this is the complete version of Gabby Williams. Saw some confidence on the stretch, had that unfortunate concussion against the Mystics in that round 1 series, had a great year. I went with Ezi because, this was a year that in the beginning of the season, before the team added Tina Charles, really started to flourish offensively and defensively. Had some great block numbers, had a case to an extent for Defensive Player of the Year, even for Most Improved Player for the league award, but just showed great improvement as a young center. And I think that she's a restricted player and the team would have to pick up her option, and they will. They absolutely will. I'm just hoping to see her really flourish more because it doesn't seem like Tina Charles will be back with Seattle next season. For Best New Addition, this was also a unanimous vote. We both went with Gabby Williams. Gabby showed great defensive play, just an absolute versatile player. That's, the definition of versatile. Can really guard from the 1 to the 4 spot. When her offensive game was going, it was scary. She had some great games where her offensive input matched her defensive input, and was just a really impact player for Seattle. I expect them to want her back, but depending on the and WNBA prioritization sort of fee thing there that I'll talk about in a second in regards to Breanna Stewart, she might not even be in WNBA next season. So we'll talk about that. But Gabby, great addition to this team. Really exciting to see how she gained her confidence down the stretch, but really will be interesting to see what her decision is. I'm sure Seattle will want her back to help her be a part of this new look team, but that's ultimately up to Gabby. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm talking a ton. The prioritization thing that I'm mentioning is that the WNBA, I believe it's this upcoming season, has put into effect a new fee where if there are players who are unable to participate in the WNBA training camp for their respective teams, they will be fined. And I believe they could miss part of the season. But that's a big issue because a lot of these WNBA players go overseas, whether it's Europe, Russia, obviously with the Brittany Griner case that comes into light, where their seasons are wrapping up around training camp time and they don't always make it to training camp. So even if you're like a day late, you get slapped with this sort of prioritization thing. So that's why Breanna Stewart and Gabby Williams are kind of like, I don't know, like I want to be able to play overseas, and the league, that it was a dumb thing to add. So that will be big to watch as the offseason continues, and just to see how that affects this offseason period, free agency, all that sort of thing. So we'll keep an eye on that, but that's why I talk about potentially not seeing Stewie or Gabby back this upcoming year. Don't want to frighten anybody, but I want that to be in your heads for when, if that potentially happens. But we'll have you covered regardless of what takes place. We look to best game. I didn't get an input on Bell about this one from Bell. I went with game 1 against the Mystics in round 1 of the playoffs. This was an 86-83 win. This was a tough game throughout. First game of the playoffs for Seattle. They play a Mystics team that battled them for that 4 seed all throughout. Both teams played good games against each other throughout the regular season, and it took Jewel Lloyd late in the fourth quarter to really heat up and help Seattle win this game. It was a really good game. I mean, it showed two really talented teams. Elena Deladon tried to will Washington to a win, wasn't able to do so, as Jewel Lloyd effectively matched her bucket for bucket. Yeah, this was a really good game. Just to see this and be a part of this was really special to me, just to see how that all took place. And I'm sure it could have gone with something in the regular season, but Seattle did a good job throughout the regular season to sort of handle business. And I mean, you could have gone with one of those Vegas games, but I mean, 3 of those were outs, so I'd try to not do that. Biggest weakness for the team. This was one that kind of became evident throughout the regular season. You could look to maybe rebounding. That was an issue that Noel Quinn highlighted throughout the year. The defense at times struggled against Vegas. Vegas, best team in the league. I mean, they just won the championship. But the lack of a consistent third scorer. Stewie and Jewel often would lead the team in offense. Sometimes Tina would replace Jewel as that, but there was no consistent third weapon for Seattle. You can't really expect Sue Bird to be that offensive production. She never really was a high scorer necessarily. Tina Charles had her moments where her offensive production was big, but there were some times where it was just like non-existent. Gabby Williams wasn't a reliable offensive threat to be your third person. So it kind of became, all right, who's going to be that third person? And there never really was one. So it's going to be interesting, say, best case scenario, that Stewie does come back. Who are you going to bring in to be that third person? Because you really, with the way that Vegas is, you're going to need a third threat. Considering how deep Vegas is, you look at Asia Wilson, obviously now a 2-time MVP. Chelsea Gray terrorized Seattle throughout the playoffs. Don't want to think about that. Kelsey Plum has had an amazing year, won All-Star Game MVP. Checky Young, I believe, was most improved player. Just we can go on about their weapons, and it's like you can only match Vegas so much. You look at Stewie and Asia, Jewel and say Chelsea. Okay, who's matching up against I said Chelsea. Who's matching up against Kelsey Plum? Offensively wise, who's going to negate Kelsey on the offensive end? So that's going to be really important to see what Seattle does to shape their upcoming team this year, and how they attack free agency, because there are going to be some targets. Obviously, we'll see some players resign that'll get taken off the board, but it's going to be really important to see if this team goes into rebuild mode or if they're able to retool and immediately put out another playoff contender. So with that all being talked about, the offseason targets, a couple players that I would like to see Seattle look at, depending on money that may or may not happen, or other decisions like getting re-signed by the current team that they're with, or retirement. I looked at Courtney Vandersloot, pictured on the right there, and for Dearica Hamby. Hamby is somebody that's been mentioned. Storm Chaser on Twitter mentioned her. Another good forward option to give some scoring for Seattle. Just some more help there to, say, Stewie, if she's able to continue there with Seattle. But Vandersloot, even to last year, was rumored to have some interest in the Storm. I believe she's a local, and with now the vacancy at the point guard position, opens up a great opportunity to take that spot over and play a final year back here in Seattle for her. But that obviously There's some things, maybe retirement. Hemby may get signed back, but considering that the Aces just won the whole thing, obviously championship teams aren't able to keep everybody from their core. Well, not core necessarily, but not able to keep everybody. So maybe Hamby's like, okay, I've made my mark in Vegas. Time to go somewhere else. So it'll be an interesting offseason. Obviously, there were the rumors about Tina that we played on last year. So it will be really interesting to see how the offseason goes, but really looking forward to that and getting into the offseason. But for now, that's our season recap. Is there anything that you would have liked to see us talk about? You can see our scroller there at the bottom. Feel free to leave us comments on who your most improved player was, your best game of the past year, your biggest weakness for this team, and potential additions to this 2023 Storm team that will be built here later on. But we look over two team-related notes now. On the 15th of September, it was announced that Breanna Stewart was named to the All-WNBA First Team. Stewie is earning first-team honors for the fourth straight season that she has played in, as well as All-WNBA recognition for the fifth time in her career that non-first team time she was named to the second team. Stewie became the 9th player in WNBA history to appear in the first team in 4 consecutive seasons played. She is the 3rd player to accomplish that feat for the Storm after Lauren Jackson appeared on 5 straight first teams from the 2003 to 2007 seasons, as well as Sue Bird, who was honored with 4 straight from 2002 to 2005. Stewie led the WNBA scoring for the first time in her career, pouring in a career best 21.8 points per game in this past season. She scored in double figures in all 34 games that she played in this year, a streak which is the longest active streak in the league. To go back to the MVP thing, A'ja Wilson is a great player. She should have absolutely been 1B in the MVP voting. But if you take A'ja out, I'm sure this Aces team can continue to move the ball, considering the other options that we've talked about. If you take Stewie out of this past year's Storm lineup, they really struggle. And that was the case last year in the playoffs against Phoenix, even to an extent when Stewie was out last year. So in terms of most valuable, and if we're actually going off of the value, should have been Stewie, but I digress. We look over here to league notes. The only thing I've got for you is at the 18th of September, it was announced that the Aces won the WNBA Finals over the Sun. Chelsea Gray was named the Finals MVP. She had an amazing postseason, and that's really well earned. First-year coach Becky Hammon, after winning Coach of the Year, wins her first title wins the title in her first season as the head coach for Las Vegas. So that's Vegas dominated, like I said, last week, and even the weeks before, they seemed like the team of destiny. Who's going to beat them? Nobody. So they were able to win 3-1. Connecticut was able to put up a fight, get one game, but they just couldn't keep up. So congratulations to Vegas, and we'll be certainly excited to see how the offseason takes place.